Hello Internet, and welcome to one of my rare experiments where I try to make a YouTube video in English. Usually most of my stuff is in German, but from time to time I get courageous and try this, even though I never get to speak English in everyday life. But might be good for my brain to try it. So here it goes. Today I'm gonna talk to you about crappy games for the PlayStation 2, and I bet the ones you're gonna see today are some games that you've never heard about before. I bought this big pack of games on eBay. They were really cheap and I got 22 of them. And when I looked through the pictures, I actually didn't recognize any of them, even though I've been a gamer for a long time and I've been collecting for a long time. And then I thought, okay, if I've never heard of any of those games, those must be interesting in some way. I guess my final bid was like 22 euros and I got it for 21.50. It's still quite expensive, but for those games at least. But those were all sealed, those were all new, and I really was interested and I wanted to see them. A mere 2 days after the auction ended, I was sent this big shoebox full of games, obviously sent by a duct tape monger, but I'm gonna try to open it up for you and we'll check out what's inside. Alright, here we go. Oh, how nice. They wrote me a letter asking me to leave them a positive reference on eBay, which I'm gonna do because they sent this really quickly. So let's check out the games real quick. What do we have here? Sniper Assault, never heard of it. Superbike GP, never heard of it either. Seek and Destroy. You know what? I'm gonna do this differently than the German version of this video. I'm gonna speed this up because I read somewhere that Americans have a short attention span, so here we go. Wow, that's a lot of crappy games for 21.50. After I unpacked them, I kinda tried to organize them by development team, and the first team I found was Mira Entertainment, and then I looked at on the internet and I found out that they are kind of infamous. I can really recommend the site to you, Crappy Games Wiki, and I'm gonna put it in the description so you can check it out. They basically just look at all the crappy publishers, development teams, and oh wait a second, do you hate Electronic Arts? Yes I do. Cast my vote right there. Well, Mira Entertainment was a small, or still is, actually they still exist to this day and try to sell their crappy stuff on the PlayStation Network. Very small European developer. I guess none of the games you're gonna see today ever made it to the US. So you're gonna be in for a treat because you've never seen any of these before, I'm quite sure of it. Well, they really suck, and they worked together with an Italian film company. They produced cartoons, and those cartoons are really bad. I'm just gonna give you a couple of seconds of Dingo Films' version of Pocahontas, and then we'll talk again.
Forza voi due, venite. Ehi, Vabu, dove sei?
Sto arrivando, Poca. Aspetta solo un momento.
Bisogna sempre aspettarlo. O sta mangiando oppure sta combinando qualche...
Chiaro, si mangiano sempre il mio salmone.
I don't know about you, but after seeing that, I'm done with Disney and Pixar. It's all Dingo Films for me until the end from now on. The next crappy developer is Phoenix Games, which actually made most of the games I got from this eBay deal. And they appear to be even worse than Midas. Phoenix Games was a team that consisted of just 6 people, which didn't keep them from making a lot of games. Actually, throughout the PS1 and PS2 era, they made 91 games with just 6 people. That's amazing. And I guess it already gives you a hint about the quality of what we're about to see. Despite a lot of research, I was never able to figure out if Phoenix Games actually ever acquired a license from Sony to be allowed to officially make PS2 games, or if they simply just did it and released it to the bargain bins of Europe. I guess the last part is probably true, because on Crappy Games Wiki you can read that their discs are of such substandard quality that they actually bend and get warped when they get warm inside the PS2, and then you cannot use them anymore. So I guess that is a really crappy developer. Amazing. This whole eBay package actually only contained one single game by a developer I've heard about before, and that's Seek and Destroy by Play It Games. And that was a typical bargain bin developer back in the day, like 15 years ago. And that's also the only game I could even find a review for online. All the other stuff in this package is so obscure, nobody bothered to review it. Alright, so let's start with Seek and Destroy, because I actually believe that this might be the best game in this whole eBay package I got. It is an action game with tanks, and there's a certain tactical element in it. I mean, you drive around and you have to fight enemies, but you always have to adjust your cannons depending on how far away your enemies are, and that makes it interesting. Yeah, I could have paid $5 for this one and I would have not been angry about it. This is like typical. This is like a typical 50 to 60% game if I had to review it, and I'm not angry that I got it. It's quite alright actually. Before I get to the rest of it, I want to take a couple of seconds to remind all of you how great PlayStation 2 games already looked at the time, because it's been a couple of years, so you have a point of reference for later on. This is the first God of War, which came out around the same time as most of the games I'm about to show you. Please don't be scared, I'm not gonna show you footage of each and every single game I bought. I just picked a couple that looked interesting to me. And the first one of those is this one, World Super Police. And it is actually quite an amazing thing, because this was an ambitious game, but obviously they did have neither the money nor the time or the manpower to develop what they originally envisioned. This kind of reminds me of Sega or Namco action games from the 90s, like the mid-90s, even though this came out almost a decade later. At least from the character design and from the way it is presented. And it is quite an interesting game actually. It's basically a racer with some action, because after the third mission, I believe, you actually get guns, and the people you're chasing, you can actually fire at them and try to get them to stop that way. I was rather confused when I played this, because in the 1.5 hours I invested in this amazing game, I actually kept dying quite a bit, and I never knew why. I have this theory, and that is that my colleagues on the police squad actually shot me from behind, because when you chase certain criminals, you don't do it alone. There's always some other cops with you that are controlled by the computer, and I guess whenever I was first, they just kept shooting me in the back, and so I guess I died that way. But I'm not quite sure. I might have to play this a little bit longer. World Super Police is the kind of crappy game I love, because of course from a technical point of view it's rather bad. It has crappy car models. The rest of the graphics are kind of alright for PlayStation 2 era games, but there are so many things that are just funny about it, especially the dialogues. I still believe that there were two people involved in providing all of the voices. One guy basically gave his voice to all of the male cops, and one girl probably did all of the female characters in this game. And the dialogues are really bad and really funny, and so you can get a kick out of this game if you ever find it.
We obey the law. We should never think that we are above the law.
Sorry, Chief.
Don't forget that.
Robert, you are right. We serve the law. Criminals must be judged by the law.
You betray the law! Law!
The next game I checked out was Football Generation, and you have to remember that this comes from an era where there were more than 2 football simulations, basically, or sorry, soccer simulations for the American viewers. Back in the day, there were like dozens of these. I must own at least 10 different soccer simulations for the PlayStation 2. There was like Red Card Soccer, This Is Football. There was even like a weird Sega soccer game with fantasy characters, which I've forgotten the name of, but there was a lot. Nowadays it's just FIFA and PES, but as I said, back in the day there was a lot of these, and yeah, alright, Football Generation, it's bearable, I would say. It's one of the not so good ones. It doesn't offer the same kind of controls that modern day football simulations offer. There's very limited things you can do in it, and it took me a long time to figure out the controls because they are so different from the way soccer games are constructed these days. But oh well, it's okay. It's has kind of bad graphics, as you can see right here, but it's not funny in any way. I wished it would have been crappier so I could have had a laugh at it, but no, it's just alright. So, Football Generation, boring game. Go away. The next game I picked to show you is Power Volleyball, and this one is slightly more entertaining than that soccer game we just saw, and I guess my expectations were rather high, because volleyball is easier to simulate than as football, but still they failed completely. This has graphics that look like a PS1 game, an early PS1 game at that. And I guess the main selling point is just, okay people, here you have a volleyball game and you can look in at digital women with little clothes on. So probably back in the day that was like an argument that actually got them some sales. The graphics are bad and the controls are superficial, and this game just doesn't have a lot of content. It gets boring after about 5 minutes. But still, you might get a little kick out of it when you play it in multiplayer mode. I'm not quite sure about that. But one thing I actually liked, and that's the sound effect. Although they don't really make me think about volleyball, they make me think about something completely different.
Yes!
Ball in. Ball in.
Yes!
The next game I picked is called Arcade Action, and it contains 30 minigames. And I was actually quite excited about this one because I like old school games and I own a lot of compilation discs with classics on them. Sadly, I figured out rather quickly that these are not the classics. None of the games on this compilation was ever in any arcade. These are rather reimaginings of old school games, and they did a bad job at doing that. This collection contains a lot of clones of classic games such as Arkanoid or Breakout or Pong. Basically anything where you have to pass a ball around, and yeah, that would actually have been cool if they could have put something that came close to the originals on here, but no, they didn't. They updated the graphics and they are really ugly now, and the controls are quite terrible actually. What was really surprising to me is that in most of these games, whatever you are controlling, be it a spaceship or a helicopter or whatever, it always self-centers in a locked position. So you actively have to fight against that, and that is the dumbest decision I've seen in a video game in a long time. There's no reason to do it. It's just there to piss off your customers, I guess. So if that's what they wanted to achieve, they did a great job. Aside from the Pong clones and Breakout and Arkanoid clones, there's a couple of original games here like Mini Golf or some weird variation of Mini Golf where you have to explode a ball close to a bomb. But as you can see here, the graphics are really bad and it's also quite hard to control. None of the mini games here have any value whatsoever, but I guess you can have a little bit of fun with them. What's really strange to me is that a game that is this simplistic actually has problems with the detection of collisions. Is it collision detection in English? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's really bad, and it was quite frustrating to me for a while. Alright people, it's time to rejoice because we're almost done. Skateboard Madness Extreme Edition is the last game I'm gonna show you today, and it comes from a time where everything was extreme, so I guess they had to put it on the cover, and I don't think there is any other version of this except for the extreme version. This is obviously the budget version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and this one is actually a lot of fun to play for a couple of minutes, because it is just so amazing how much worse this is than the one they modeled it after. As you can see right from the beginning, the camera is terrible and the graphics are terrible. It would be amazing to me if this had 1/5 of the animations that a regular Tony Hawk game from back in the day had. But the camera is actually vomit-inducing because it always feels as if you're actually controlling the background and not the skater. It has kind of this Super Monkey Ball feeling, and this makes me sick to my stomach every time I try it. And I can play PlayStation VR for like over half an hour fine without feeling anything, so that's quite a feat for an old game like this. As you can probably guess by now, this game really sucks. The controls are quite terrible, there's not a lot of tricks you can do, not compared to Tony Hawk where there is an amazing variety of tricks. I still love to play that game to this day, but this basically after like 10 minutes you've seen everything those skaters can pull off. And it also kind of sucks that you always have to land very straight. If you don't, you just basically bail from your skateboard, and so it's almost impossible to really string combos together and to get a little combo high score going, which is basically all the where the fun comes from in all of these games. So yeah, I guess this game is okay if you have like a multiplayer evening and everybody is already rather drunk and you want to mess with them a little. Just pull this one out and have like a high score battle. Then a little bit of fun can be had, but that's about all it's good for. Okay, we're finally done. You watched roughly 20 minutes of crappy video games for the PlayStation 2, and I would feel sorry for you if I didn't have to play hours of those to make this video. I hope you enjoyed this, and please let me know if you did in the comments so I know that there is interest in more English videos on my channel. Alright, this package of crappy eBay games brought my collection to over 1,900 physical games. At least it did that, not much else. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. See you, bye!